Brought to you by, oh wait, I don't have to do an intro. Ha! Because I have Finbarr as my guest at the very beginning for 15 minutes. So we can just jump right in. Nice.
Keep that bit in. I'd love that. Just keep that in there.
That'll be a blooper for the Patreons.
Yeah.
Brought to you by MediaTek. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joire, and today is Thursday, March 7th, 2024. And I have once again the excellent Finbarr Moynihan here of MediaTek. Hi, Finbarr, how are you?
Hi, Miriam. Good to be with you.
Absolutely. Listen, we saw each other in Barcelona last week at MWC. Of course, a lot of things happened there, but more importantly, a lot of MediaTek things happened there. And so I would love to kind of chat with you about that because I just got the Nothing Phone 2A here. It got here when I got home, and it's lovely. And you know, I've enjoyed Nothing's products before, but this is the first time they've been using a MediaTek chipset. So I'd love to chat a little bit about how that partnership developed. If you can elaborate on that, and then we'll dive into some of the other stuff.
Sounds good. It's definitely an exciting new announcement and a new partnership for MediaTek. We're obviously very excited to partner with Nothing. I was at the event at Barcelona as well, where they unveiled the device, and then obviously they had the launch event this week in India. So it's all very exciting. As you know, it's powered by the Dimensity 7200 family. So it's kind of in that, mid-range, if you want to call it that. But I think when you look at the work that the Nothing team has done on the design, both the hardware and the software design, and the way they've sort of positioned the product, I think we're very excited about the opportunity to grow share with them. And I think for them to grow share in some of the markets that they're targeting, where I think, my opinion, they've sort of nailed the key balance of, features, power, performance for the market there. So it's definitely a very exciting announcement, and we're very, very pleased to partner with them.
Yeah, I've been following their journey for a while now. Have used every single one of their devices, and I think that their last, flagship product was really kind of showing us what a user experience that is well thought and well polished could look like on Android. And I think, we get some of that, but we don't get as much as that I'd like to see. And so here they're coming out with a product that's not a flagship product, that's kind of scaling down the spec sheet, but not scaling down that experience. And I think that's critical. And I think if you look at it from a Western North American, European perspective, $349 is what it sells for. It's not officially sold in the US as a broadly available product because it doesn't support all the bands, but it's available for developers. And it's really priced here as a budget device, but you look at what it achieves, and it's very much a mid-range product. Mm-hmm. And so, in India, for example, where the launch is going to be, I think the pricing reflects what a mid-range phone costs in India. And I think it's interesting, I think for my audience, those who are not abroad, to kind of reevaluate their perspective in terms of what pricing looks like in different markets, because this might be price budget for our markets, but it's really a mid-range product. And I think the Dimensity 7200 reflects that, right?
Yeah. No, it's a good point. And I think, when you look at the main, they launched in India, right? Obviously, India is going through a massive transformation of 4G to 5G transition that's happening all the way now. Indian consumers are extremely tech savvy, right? They look very closely at the specs of the devices and even the specs of the chipsets within the devices. We launched the Dimensity 7200 family last year. It was the first in that series. We're still bringing 4-nanometer technology. So all of the attendant, performance and power efficiencies that process technology can bring. If you recall, we discussed the product at the time. We also brought a lot of that flagship camera capability into the device. Again, camera capability we know is a focus of the Nothing team, and is certainly something that the consumers in those markets and at those price points care a lot about. And I think when you couple all of that with the sort of final design of the device that the Nothing team has come up with, and all of the experience and know-how, I guess, that they've brought from their previous flagship launches that you're familiar with, I think it really is hitting a very sweet spot in the market for consumers, not just in India, but Europe and other places where I think they're going to be launching as well.
Yeah, no, I think on the surface, you look at it and you go, it's a mid-ranger, and it's got all the things you'd expect a mid-ranger, but then you add the design-centric kind of push that nothing's well known for, with the glyph interface in the back, those lights, and then of course the user experience, as I mentioned, that I've experienced already on the previous phones. And then you look at small details like adding OIS to the camera on a mid-range phone that costs $350, little things like that, the choice of chipset here. And it just becomes clearly obvious that nothing has paid attention. And what I'm excited about, and it was a little confusing at launch with them, because they kind of did this marketing thing where it was very kind of like, piecemeal. They revealed the 7200, but they called it 7200 Pro, and we thought maybe that was different hardware. But it turns out that what it is some great work between your team at MediaTek and the Nothing team to optimize the way the chip can perform to maximize that user experience that we've seen on their flagship devices. And to me, that spoke so much to MediaTek's willingness to work with any customer, big or small, because Nothing is still, an up-and-coming brand. They're a bit of a darling because we like the design and the experience and the marketing and the vibe, but ultimately they don't sell in a number that, say, a partner for you like Vivo or Oppo would. So I thought that was brilliant. And I was wondering if you could speak to that a little more, how that worked out for you and how that evolved.
Yeah, no, we worked, it's exactly as you described it, right? So obviously Nothing had a very strong vision for what they wanted to achieve with the device, right? They knew where they wanted to differentiate, where they wanted to optimize. I think in some of their marketing material, they've been very transparent and open about how they benchmarked the MediaTek Dimensity 7200 against a bunch of other competitive platforms, and ultimately decided, rightly, I would say, that the Dimensity 7200 was exactly the right product for this segment and this device. But they also had their own ideas of where they wanted to invest some of their own know-how, some of their own capabilities, to differentiate even from the standard version of the Dimensity 7200. And so, yes, power consumption was one of those. We worked very closely with them on that, but of course it's their capabilities, their know-how, their engineering that's sort of feeding that goodness into it, right? And so that's where, we've done this with other brands for other products in the past. Nothing obviously is a capable company with capable engineering. We worked with them on this. And so that's where the Dimensity 7200 Pro version, as the sort of the Nothing version of the product, comes from, with their differentiation, their know-how, their goodness in there.
Yeah, I've been playing with the phone. I'm currently reviewing it, so I'm very excited to see how that pans out. So far, the experience has been awesome, and I think that speaks to MediaTek's ability to just work with the Nothing team. So yeah, I think this has been one of the stories out of MWC I was very excited about. Kind of late into the event, but at the same time, since the launch officially happened after MWC, but we're very close to it. It just happened 2 days ago, so exciting, I think, for my audience to find out more and have you here to tell us about it. But MediaTek did a whole bunch of other things at MWC. I want to speak a little bit about maybe AI, since it's kind of a hot topic right now. Tell us a little bit what you guys showed off here at the event on AI.
But yeah, no surprise, AI, and I guess specifically Gen AI, was a very hot topic at the Mobile World Congress, like with lots of companies talking about it in many different guises and formats. I mean, our focus, I think, at the event last week was really on the Dimensity 9300, our flagship device, and a little bit maybe the Dimensity 8300, which also has some Gen AI capability built in. But we were showing a couple of really cool and really innovative demos. Some of these were shown on our own reference hardware. Some of the demos were actually working on some of the flagship devices from Vivo and Oppo that have already launched with the Dimensity 9300. I would say the two that were kind of, I guess, eye-catching were, we had what we called our SDL XL Turbo, or Standard Diffusion XL Turbo, which was, I think, caught a lot of people's attention, which was really
I enjoyed
kind of
that one a lot.
yeah, text to image generation. But as you typed in real time, the image changed, right? So there was no real lag. people were doing all different kinds of experimenting and playing with it, but you could sort of type whatever you wanted. And as you were typing and adding more qualifiers to the text, the image was changing in real time. So kind of, taking the classic, text to image stable diffusion maybe to the next level. And again, all happening on device, all happening without a network connection, all running on our, AI acceleration hardware that we were very proud of in the Dimensity 9300.
Yes, Brad gave me a demo, and folks, stay tuned. I've got a reel coming up on Instagram with a little demo of that. It was a lot of fun. I think if you just kind of look at it from the outside going, okay, cool, but then if you think about what's actually happening in the sense that it is on device without an internet connection, but more importantly, every single letter that's typed in makes the image regenerate. And that's the part that kind of really caught me, as a nerd, was like, oh my God, what's going on in the background here to make this happen? It's pretty significant.
I'm glad you caught a reel. It's much easier to explain with an image or a reel than it is with the words. But yeah, that caught a lot of people's attention because I think it was a little maybe unexpected or a little surprising for people that it was that capable.
Yeah. So anything else on the AI side that you wanted to highlight? Because there's so much to talk about. I'd love to chat as well about the automotive side of things.
Sure. Maybe one other quick one on the AI before we move on to automotive was I think our LoRa Fusion or low rate adaption fusion demo, which was kind of, if you recall, it was at the front of our booth. It was kind of the demo that was drawing some of the crowds into our booth. But in the most simplest terms, it's really taking an image of somebody so people from the audience could participate. And then it can, turn that image into multiple different styles of images. So you can have sort of different avatars, different artistic styles, different creative styles, that you can use then as a sort of a social media or personification kind of a tool. So it's a little bit feeding into that fun social thing that you can get out of some of the Gen AI capability. And the technology behind that, what we call LoRa Fusion, what that really means is that we have an architecture that allows you to sort of download and run the core application one time, and which is obviously a big file with the whole large language and big Gen AI files. But then you can just add on much smaller sizes. This is sort of the fusion part, if you like. And then with a simple download, you can sort of just add on new styles. So the same core image generation technology is there. The style file, if you like, comes in as a simple add-on, and then you can just sort of perpetuate that for different styles and different creative techniques as you go forward. So I think that caught a lot of people's attention as well as kind of a fun, interesting, social kind of use case for Gen AI.
Kind of reminds you of some of those Instagram video filters, but on steroids, taken to the next level, basically.
Exactly.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that, as the devices allow on-machine AI to happen, more seamlessly. We're going to start seeing these options pop up in various apps. So it's pretty fun and exciting. Exactly. All right, let's talk about automotive, because you guys had a quote unquote car on your booth. It was kind of fun. It was a stylized, kind of like a essentially wire mesh Tron-like version of a car, but you had real seats and real demos happening in there. So tell us a little bit more about what happened with automotive and MediaTek.
Sure. Well, we've talked about automotive in the past. It's a major focus for us going forward. It was something we wanted to showcase at MWC again, because I think as we're looking at the, future software-defined vehicle, that whole connected vehicle is also a big part of that story going forward. So within the car, we were demonstrating some of the smart cockpit solutions for, the display, some of the hypervisor technology that we work with some of our partners on to, have single SoCs running both the cockpit sort of instrument cluster, but also the, infotainment, multimedia, car control kind of panels. And also with some other partners then talking about or showcasing, multimedia distribution within the car. So kind of moving from the smart cockpit to maybe the smart cabin, right, where you have lots and lots of displays going forward. And then a little bit as well, talking about some of the connectivity and the telematics and Wi-Fi capability that we're also enabling for the car going forward. So, not a major automotive show as we know, MWC, but I think that more and more as these sort of technologies fuse into each other, the connectivity, the AI capabilities, the multimedia capabilities, that's what we were trying to showcase at the event in Barcelona.
No, it definitely was kind of cool to check out. And, I think that a lot of people, you still haven't experienced software defined vehicles, but it's really coming at us very quickly, and it's going to really change the experience in the car. And I'm excited to see a lot of these technologies kind of like start appearing in these products. So
Exactly.
yeah, I was excited to see a car there. I mean, obviously Xiaomi had their own car at their booth. That was kind of a big
Beautiful.
deal. But it's not the first time. MWC had Fisker, the Ocean was at the show like back in 21 or 22, a couple of years back. So it's not unusual. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised, obviously Mobile Congress used to be called 3GSM, right? It's a congress about connectivity. Ultimately, it became the phone show, but it's really about connectivity. Right? And moving on, I just want to also kind of catch up with you on a couple of connectivity related, items. The satellite connectivity stuff you showed was really interesting, and I know there's a lot going on right now. We're talking about direct to cell phone satellite connectivity using 5G bands now and stuff like that. So fill us in on that, and also the other connectivity technologies that are being shown at MWC.
Sure. Yeah. So, if you recall, Miriam, last year at MWC, we had a big splash with our NTN satellite solutions, right? So we launched the product for satellite NTN IoT connectivity. We had a really nice demo showing the capability of the next generation NR NTN capability, which brought, megabit per second, broadband data rates from satellite, which will become available going forward. This year, we went in a slightly different direction. We were focused on, the antenna tracking technology for what will be required going forward for supporting the connectivity over the more traditional satellite KU band, the frequency band that's more traditionally used. That has brings the possibility of significantly higher bandwidth connections from the satellite link going forward. Again, we're still in sort of the early technology development phase of this, so that's where we were showcasing. But this also, I think, shows us, where some of this technology will go over time, particularly as the industry starts moving into kind of the 6G era in the future, where, again, I think the whole NTN pervasive connectivity is going to be a big part of it, not just across sort of the more traditional bands that we had in the past, but also some of these more traditional satellite bands like the KU band. So that was sort of the big focus of our demo at MWC this year.
Yeah, you had a cool demo with like a robot arm simulating a satellite flying overhead, and then the device below it kind of like and getting the data basically, and you could see the performance was pretty awesome. What do you think we'll be able to see on KU band for like real life performance once this is become a commercial product? Are we going to be able to see beyond just emergency services or
yeah, very, this is definitely more like broadband capability and real high data rate. Yeah, exactly. And so much more complicated antennas, much more complicated RF structures, much more complicated antenna beamforming and tracking the capabilities, and again probably taking this capability beyond traditional devices as well, right? So I think the demo had a little car, so maybe that shows us where this may end up in the long run, right? Again, for connecting into the cars and stuff like that.
I mean, that does make sense, as it satellite radio has kind of changed the game in cars, and that's slowly being replaced with internet-based services. But you can't get internet in the middle of the desert right now, so this would really solve the problem for sure. What other things do you want to quickly mention before we wrap up?
We had talked about some of the RedCap technology we were developing, at the Executive Summit last year, as you may recall. But we also announced at the event last week in Barcelona the first MediaTek T300, the actual RedCap product itself. And so just to recap, RedCap, reduced capability. This is the 5G standard for, things that are going to be like wearables, AR, VR, but also I think in the broader, industrial IoT connected market. And RedCap has the potential to deliver, what I would consider, compatible to the old LTE Category 4, Category 6 data rates. So we're talking about, a couple of hundred megabits per second kind of level of data rates. So this is for things that require real connectivity, real data. Certainly not as high as the peak rates you can get with a full 5G modem. But on the other hand, we're seeing something in the order of 60 to 70% power consumption savings.
Yeah, I was going to say power is going to be the massive saver here, right?
Yeah. So when you get that level of power consumption savings, not just from the full capability 5G modem, but also from the historical 4G kind of connectivity technologies, we think it's going to be a breakthrough technology for some of these applications, like wearables, like AR, VR, other kind of devices that can benefit from always connected cellular connectivity, where you're outside of a Wi-Fi hotspot or whatever it might be.
Do you see that getting incorporated into microcontrollers going forward, basically, like for, kind of like low power wearable and other devices? Because obviously right now it's a separate product, right?
Yeah. I think it could be in future. Yeah. I mean, I think in the, what we've launched at Barcelona last week is obviously the standalone RedCap modem, right? So this can obviously get built into modules. They can be put into all different classes of devices, whether consumer devices like wearables or whether it's, industrial IoT kind of devices. So I think the first phase is likely going to be sort of module-based deployments with, all these applications, adding that kind of connectivity. Over time, I think as it becomes more pervasive, let's see how it develops.
Great. Well, listen, I think you gave us a good perspective on what MediaTek did at MWC. I spent a lot of time at your booth because you're always so hospitable. Thank you very much for having an awesomely stocked press room for a lot of us. So thanks again, Finbarr. We'll definitely have you on in the future. And now let's move on to the rest of the show.
Thanks, Miriam. Always a pleasure.
So I'm back with TK Bay. Hi, TK. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm getting over the jet lag from MWC finally now. But yeah, no, I'm happy to be back. Yeah, but glad that we got a chance to hang out a little bit at MWC, and then now we get a chance to chat.
I know it was a whirlwind. I saw you kind of like in passing, like ships in the fog kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But, here we are. I got back a couple of days ago because I was at my mom's house afterwards to see her.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You mentioned you were going up to Paris for a little bit. Yeah.
So, I'm actually pretty good on jet lag right now, which is really surprising. It's only been 2 days. But look, I just had Finbarr on to talk about MediaTek's involvement with MWC.
Yeah.
And we talked obviously about this phone here, the Nothing Phone 2A, and I'm holding it up for the Patreons, and you have it as well.
Yeah.
This thing is very, very cool, and you did a video. I'm going to post it in the show notes. What are your thoughts? I just got it when I got home, so I've literally had like a day with it so far. You've had a few days. What's your take?
So I'll say this. My expectations coming into this was, I'm a little bit anxious. I'm excited to see what Nothing's able to do in the A series, the more affordable version of devices, because, they're known for their devices that are bang for the buck, great expectations, a lot of good hardware with the Nothing Phone 2. I got mine actually the day I was leaving for MWC. So it was delivered to the house and it was sitting at home the whole time I was in Barcelona.
Right.
I came back last Wednesday. So I've had my full week with it. I've experienced a lot of, throwback to the Nothing Phone 2. I see the essence, the experiences they're giving us there. But I also see kind of like where the tailoring had to happen for it to fit into that 350 price point. So that it's a very much an A series. It's a budget device that's trying to give us more for what we paid for. And the appeal of what we had with the Phone 2 is there. The glyph interface is very nice. They kind of took out also some of those a few Easter eggs that we have to usually, find, like the music virtualizer and so on. They put them right there. A lot of their collaborations with Swedish House Mafia and so on were there. That was exciting for me. And OS 2.5 is actually running pretty good. I think overall, it's a well-balanced experience when it comes to that price point. and it's in my opinion, a direct competitor to the 7A basically from Pixel, and potentially the upcoming 8A once that becomes available at some point. Because I'm thinking we're pretty close to that. But
yeah, I think a lot of what you said resonates with me as well. I feel like I have a few things I would like to comment on. I think people are calling this budget, but I think this is a mid-range phone.
Okay.
It's just budget priced for North America, right? Like, if this is, first of all, not officially available in North America, you have to go through some hoops, like developer program.
A little bit of the song and dance there, yeah.
Yeah, the US bands are not supported fully for 5G. So there are some limitations. But aside from that, I think, if you look at the pricing and the specs, this is a mid-ranger in many parts of the world. Like in India, this is a mid-ranger, right?
Yeah.
And I think because in their pricing world, $500 would be a premium mid-range or affordable flagship, right?
Yeah.
So I think for US, so 350 implies budget, but it's really not. You compare this phone to like a Moto G 5G or something that's about 350, or maybe Moto G Stylus 5G. And this thing just walks all over it, right?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
feel like you're right to compare it with the Pixel, because the 7A, because this is definitely more of a $500 phone or $450 in terms of like US pricing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of one of the disconnects with this phone. It's a little hard to explain to people because, they expect, like, with this pricing, it to be kind of more low end than the Phone 1, but it's really in many ways better than the Phone 1, and in some ways worse. It doesn't have wireless charging, right?
Exactly. It's weird because it's technically a 2A, but it really is almost like a predecessor to the 2, somewhere between the 1 and the 2, not necessarily after the 2 in the architecture. No, I totally agree. The 7200 Pro that we have here, the Dimensity, is way more powerful than what we would expect from a budget version device. The features that we have here, the cameras, dual 50 megapixel cameras, Samsung sensors that we have there.
OIS.
OIS on the main sensor, of course, and some of the main things that we get here are not typical or atypical to what we see in the budget side. The reason why I primarily kind of priced it, or at least they're trying to price it this way, is I think to bring in the appeal and to break into the market. I'm not sure why the developer option part of it, but I hope at some point that becomes a little bit more open sale for people, so that people can either benefit from the experience you're getting there, the flat display, the 120 hertz refresh rate, again, dual camera, like almost like a minion look on the back, and that see-through, beautiful, transparent backing on there. There's a lot of essence of the Phone 2 out of this. This really kind of just gets me there. Yeah. So I mean, there are some limitations. I'm not going to say that the 7200 is the best processor, but there are some areas where I feel like we could see where the device kind of struggles a little. And there's also a little bit of management in there that's being done that I hope once this becomes officially available publicly, they work on some of the performance experiences in there. Because you'll notice that when you start doing your testing, there's a little bit of throttling going on, even with the 7200. Like I almost felt like they don't need to do it there, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think what I like about this is that, they are cutting corners, but it's really hard to find those corners, right? Yeah. And I think that's what I expect from Nothing, honestly. It's kind of totally in their wheelhouse. The design is really tops. I much prefer the white one, to be honest, after seeing it at MWC. Like, I find that this black one I've been showing this for the Patreons. For those of you listening to the audio version, we have a Patreon version. It's a video version if you want to help me out on patreon.com/TNKGRL. But I'm looking at this phone, and like I have like the glyphs back here with the volume slider enabled. Like right now, my fingerprint sensor is not working. It's very strange. There's a few bugs like that where I think you see, if you adjust
it needs
the volume,
a little bit of
you can adjust
software
the
love
like that.
Exactly.
Very cool. There's 3 glyphs in the back. Look, I love that they've got the basics nailed, right? Like the display is beautiful. It's big. The bezels are even all around. Generally, you don't see this at that price point. Pixel 7a does a good job as well, although they're much chunkier bezels. You've got a processor that keeps up. What I like about it, I mean, I haven't done benchmarks yet, and I know that you've told me about throttling, but what I'm looking at is like just using it this morning, yesterday, I don't feel lag. Like it's just
there is absolutely
moving.
There UI UX, everything in there in general usage, you won't notice any issues at all. I think where you'll start noticing some of it, and again, it is not an issue or a limiting factor from the hardware. I think the hardware is way more capable of doing better performance. I think it's like when you start snapping images in compression, like when we start seeing some of the dimensity challenges in there. But it also kind of counteracts the conversation that if you just run a Geekbench 6, again, not a true representation of life, as you said, you're using it on daily, you're not noticing anything. I didn't notice anything. But if you start snapping a few images, consecutive images, and jump straight into the preview, you see how long it takes to process those images, those JPEGs. So there's some, like, and I felt like it shouldn't have to do that. And then when I ran the benchmarks in standard profile without running game mode on, you're running at almost a 611 on a single core. And that's actually quite low for the 72. And then when you run it in game mode, it jumps up to 1100. So it tells me that the governor hasn't been set up correctly. We're throttling too much on, just to try to get better battery life.
I think that's exactly where they're after. Like when I talked to Finbarr just now, he, first of all, I want to make it clear, like I've heard this from numerous people and now from the horse's mouth on the podcast before you, right? Like this is not a different chip. It's called Pro because it's just a marketing term here. It just means that MediaTek and Nothing spent a lot of time optimizing their software to run as efficiently as possible on this device. That means the snappiness that I'm observing is real. And then the battery life savings that you're observing with the maybe slightly overbearing throttling is also real. And that's also why battery life has been reported to be really good. I haven't really used the cameras much yet, so I don't have much to say there. But, the results seem to be mixed. But here's what I've learned. And I think you and I are generally in agreement on this because we're both kind of camera nerds when it comes to mobile phones. That we're not like camera nerds in the more traditional sense. But I think when it comes to phones, we're there. I don't trust other reviewers when they tell me a camera is bad because they don't know how to use cameras, or I don't shoot like they do. And so for me, it has to be really egregious before I feel like a camera has to be bad. The true test for me is always moving subjects and low light. I think, and that's something that I have no experience on this phone yet. But at the same time, I think that what I'm enjoying here is this, what Kyle Pace said in his marketing, when he did that video telling us about what the product would be like, I feel that they've delivered on this, bringing the Nothing Phone 2 user experience down to this $350 price point with very few compromises. And for that, I'm really excited. Like I can walk away from the rest of it. Like, wireless charging missing is a bit of a bummer for me. Pixel has it, right? But it's also more expensive by $150. So you can't really also, this doesn't have a metal frame like the Pixel. It has a plastic frame. It reminds me of the Nokias. It's such high quality plastic that's been machined and precisely made. It feels really nice in hand. Again, I prefer the white one. I think the white one has that frostiness in the back plastic. It's not glass in the back. It's a transparent, translucent plastic. There's this whiteness, and here it's a smokiness. But what I find is compared to Phone 2, which I had the kind of the grayish version, it's really hard to see all this detail underneath the rear panel, right? All this little nothings, the nothingness of it, right? You know what I'm saying?
Hashtag the word nothing will be said multiple times on this episode. Thank you for joining the nothing.
That's kind of what I'm a bit bummed about on this black one. It's it's almost hiding its nothingness behind this very smoky back panel. Whereas the white one is okay, we have this creamy white back and it's really nice.
And they have two colors, right? They have that milk and white. There's actually 3 colors total.
That's right, there is.
And we got to see the white one, I think, at during Barcelona's unveiling, at the design unveiling at the party. I think the approach to, because there's a little bit of a kind of a pros and cons on both sides. When you go with the lighter colors, the glyph doesn't stand out as much because then you're dealing with white on white. But then when you go with the darker one, I can understand why from a PR standpoint, when they want to send out units, they want people to see that there's a glyph interface, right? So I felt like maybe that's why. But I do know that some of our friends did receive white units. I'm not going to say that everybody did, because I think I want to say
very few of us actually.
Ben Geskin did get a white one. I saw that one; it looked really nice. I like both. You're right. The Phone 2 still, to me, stands out to being a lot more premium. But to meet Carl's expectations, or at least to meet Carl's what he set the expectation level to be, it's absolutely there. When you're going into this, you are getting the phone 2 at a slightly tailored experience to fit the budget, slightly different processor, but you don't really feel the difference when you're in it. Like if you put a case on it and you start using it, you're not going to feel like you're using a different phone. The weight may be a little bit different, but
It's
otherwise
lighter,
the UI,
it's
the
thinner
snappiness, and the features are there. They're
and
not
it's
skimping
nice
on
too,
it.
because when you think about it, it's thinner, but it does have that 3D-ness to it. So it does really
Still.
have, it's wasting about 2 millimeters with all the decorations under this, kind of
and it has a bigger battery than
panel.
the original phone 1, which is even
which is
better. And
really
45 watt
impressive.
charging, and like there's significant upgrades over the first one. I mean, if you compare just the 7A with that by comparison, 45 watt charging, I take
versus 18.
exactly.
So
you'll be back up and running.
I think they nailed it. I think I think especially for the market where they're betting on this being the big seller is India, right?
Yeah.
And at this price with those specs and the attention to detail, and this is what I love about Nothing, is like, I'm a big fan of Apple for their attention to detail. I use Macs a lot. I'm not a huge iOS, iPadOS person. I do respect the iPhone. I think it's a great phone. I recommend it to a lot of people. I use one to record videos. But I like the attention to detail, and I like Android. And so Nothing brings that together in a way nobody else does. Even Google doesn't, I think, meet that to me. Like, it's just so delightful that you set up a phone, and other than the camera, weather, and voice recorder app, you really have nothing on there, pardon the pun, that's like just crap. It's all Google. It's all pure. I actually like this. This is probably my favorite skin in Android right now, honestly.
They've done a very good job of providing us that, especially if you're a fan of dark mode, if you love dark mode skins or just the UI experience that you get there. Nothing's OS skin is just second to none, and they've continued it. And again, it's the implementation that you get here with Phone 2. There was an update. We didn't have that ready at launch. There was a few things that took some time, but you definitely feel the love from there. And because we got a chance, both you and I got a chance to play with the Phone 2, we understand where this is coming from. So for somebody coming in, they're definitely not going to feel that they're missing on anything. The few selections they chose to omit, I think they're the right ones to do. Like, I'll say this, I'm happy for the fact that we do not have a 2 megapixel filler sensor on the back.
Yes.
Like, we didn't have to go triple stack in the back just to say we have 3. We don't have a depth sensor or a macro. We went with the right thing. Dual 50s on the back, a 32 on the front, and non-compromising experience. So for sure, it's definitely there. It needs a little bit of more software love, but that's typical with any kind of, we have early hardware, early software. We're going to have to live through it. By the time it gets to people's hands, I'm sure a lot of the experiences and at least the processing will definitely be improved in there.
Yeah. And, it's a big phone, but it's so deceivingly not big. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I put it next to my iPhone 15 Pro Max, I'm like, it's slightly bigger in footprint. Like, holy crap. But it's thinner. It's much lighter. And, when you're actually just using it, you don't notice the girth, the size of it. I just want to point that out for people who think that, because I think proportion wise, when you see photos of it, it looks like a smaller phone. Yeah. Oh, it is not. It is a big little sucker.
Yeah.
So, I think I'm happy with this. This is a breath of fresh air, just like Nothing Phone 2 was. And I really kind of want now, and I know this is walking on thin ice. We've seen OnePlus stumble and fall through the ice when they went up market, but I do want Nothing to make like, an S24 Ultra, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if they applied themselves,
they're slowly creeping up to that. I think what we saw last year with the Phone 2 is their aspiration to go flagship experience, flagship processors. I mean, not current gen, but still, we can say the Phone 2 is a flagship device, but it's still not like current market flagship device. So maybe it's
what
more
they're storing for. It's more of a 12R. You know what I'm saying? I want a 12, like OnePlus 12. See, and people are comparing the 12R to the Nothing Phone 2A. No, not remotely. Like,
there's a substantial difference there. Yeah,
correct. But I think that comparing, if you consider that the Nothing Phone 2 would be like a 12R, then I think what I want to see is a Nothing Phone 3 or whatever that is like a 12 or
12 or 13.
or like even something more, more substantial than that if possible. because that's where, that's how I roll. That's where I play in the big leagues up there. But I think so many people are going to love this phone, and I think it's going to be a hit, especially in India. So kudos for that. Let's move on though, because we have a lot to cover. We've got about half of the podcast is going to be EV stuff, folks. So
I'm excited.
I know, hang on to your kneecaps, because I know some of you are not too keen on that. But look, there's some big things happening right now. Let's quickly talk about this Vivo 30 Pro. I just got one in. I haven't set it up. I'm going to show it to the Patreons.
Yep.
V30 Pro from Vivo. Check out this finish on this. Like, it's like marble, but in... Oof, hang on, I got my... There you go.
Yeah,
it's marble in a very weird way. I'm not sure I like that. It's more awkward marble than the OnePlus 12 marble is awkward.
To me, I describe it when I try to explain it out to my wife. I kept explaining it. It's almost like it's white marble, but it's using the white flower petals. Like there's petals on top of each other,
like
side by side.
Like mica. It reminds me of mica, the material.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting about this phone, and I haven't tested it yet because I just got it and I just unboxed it yesterday, is that apparently, like, the V series for me has always been kind of meh. Like, no offense to Vivo, but because I know what they can do with the X series, and I understand that, stay in your lane. This is a mid-range phone, right? The V has always been mid-range.
Yeah.
But I've always had the Pros, and I didn't get the 29, but I got the 27, and the 27 was very disappointing imaging-wise. Like, I was like, wow, this is worse than some of the Vivos I've had before. So, like, what happened? And then this supposedly fixes that, because this is 3 50-megapixel sensors in the back. Mind you, one is just a 2x telephoto without OIS, so, but it does have Zeiss, and not just Zeiss, engineering, like the lenses and stuff approved, but it also has color science, it has the portrait modes, it has all that goodness. So I'm actually expecting big things here. And 50 megapixel front camera with autofocus. Every camera has autofocus. So macro photography with the ultra wide, great portrait photos, all that good stuff. So, other than that, Dimensity 8200, which is a step up from the Nothing Phone 2A. Yeah. And of course, curved edge display, very typical, very thin phone, but it's
very
big.
Light, surprisingly quite a bit lighter than I thought it would be at the fact that the battery size that it has and just for the size of it itself. Yeah, it's surprising when you change materials on the inside with the structure, you could definitely feel it right away.
I mean, it's all plastic, right? The back's plastic, the sides plastic. It's very attractive looking phone, I think, except for the weird marble petal.
There's a few colors. There's a few colors. I think they thought probably that this looks better on camera or on images. Yeah. And it's more of a personal choice. You're right. I mean, had I had the option, I probably would have gone maybe one of the other options, but it is unique. It looks, the Aura Light definitely looks very interesting, the way it fills in for the images. I luckily got this before I went on to MWC, so I had the opportunity.
You took it with you?
So that one I had with me, yes, and then Nothing I didn't. So I used it. I'll say this: still photography, at least for me, has had the best improvements overall. I think this is definitely one of the better options. We did that quick tour with I was on with Xiaomi, going through a sponsorship with them. Then we went and did a tour. I took some pictures at the museum in Barcelona. It handled low light. It handled the dynamic range very nice with the different the different statues in different positions, images, and so on. And I think probably my only thing that I will say is the image stabilization on it. Although it's great in image when you're taking pictures, when you go to video, not as good as I was expecting it to be. But it could have been just maybe it needs another dose of software update to optimize some of that. But in general, it was a good device, a good mid-ranger, very nice, a lot of features in there. ThumbTouch OS was definitely very snappy. The 8200 did not disappoint, and gaming was actually pretty decently good. Their game center that they have in there is actually very well, and there was no issues at all. I think it's a good mid-range if you're looking for the V series.
It's also very bright AMOLED. I think 3000 nits peak,
quite a bit,
with 1260 pixel resolution on the width. So it's like halfway between a 1080p panel and a Quad HD 1440 panel, which we're seeing more and more in the upper mid range.
We're starting,
kind of lower.
We're seeing a trend, the 1080. We're finally leaving that 1080 base.
That's a thing now.
Better selection is always better for the consumer. But I think both, I think between the two, I'd probably say, the V30 has a better panel, maybe, purely because of the brightness level. Like, it worked like a champ in Barcelona with the direct sunlight on it. Yeah. I think the overall, I think if I had to kind of pick between the two photography wise, the V30 Pro with Zeiss felt a little bit more professional. Like the features in there that is just Vivo's bread and butter. Like with this, if you go a little bit more in the pro modes, I felt like nothing is more of a casual snapper. You can go in there, grab the image, switch between both lenses, shoot 4K 30 on both lenses, on both the ultra wide and the standard focal length. So it really depends on the style and what color science that you prefer. The Vivo definitely had the ability of giving us that true to life color. When you take it in the Zeiss natural, not the process option, it just looks beautiful. It looks fantastic.
I'm excited because finally, like, the V series has finally stepped up the game into imaging, because as I said, V27 Pro, I don't know if it was early software or what. I was just like, wow, like it wasn't so much bad, like overall, but if you did any kind of zooming, like it felt like they were saving images at JPEG 40%, like everything was just like oil painting, JPEG artifacts everywhere. And I was just like, whoa, Vivo, what the, what's going on? So obviously everybody so far seems to be very happy with this camera. So I'm sure I will be as well. But yeah, that's another phone that came out, I think, February 28th or something. And of course,
it was, the embargo on that was literally the day I was coming back. So I had to make sure everything kind of went live.
And then I think Nothing Phone 2A was March 5th. So these are the phones we got in the last week, basically, folks.
Very fresh.
So let's talk about Apple's new MacBooks. I mean, look, they're really nothing new. It's just a MacBook Air 13 and 15. And it's with the M3 chip now. So yeah, you do get more performance. The price is $1099 for the base model. It's still only 8 gigs 256, which is ridiculous. But this is my take, and I want to hear your thoughts. My take is this: $999 now buys you the MacBook Air M2, right? And at first I thought, okay, they've gotten rid of the wedge MacBook Air M1, which was $999. I think it went down to $899 at one point, but they've replaced that and it's gone. It's the end of an era. Like the wedge shaped is gone, but I thought that was just going to be the one model that was $999. I thought we were going to get the 13 M2 for $999, 8 gig 256. And then if you wanted anything better, you had to go to M3. That is not the case, folks. You can go and configure an M2 with, 512 gigs of storage, 1 terabyte, up to 32 gigs of RAM. And you're saving money over the M3 quite a bit. You basically can get yourself a 16 gig, 512 M2 13-inch MacBook for about $1399, which at that price with those specs, like that's a solid computer.
And the performance gap between the 2 and the 3 is it's there, but it's not as substantial as going, let's say, from a 1 to a 3. So you're definitely getting the savings of, let's say, buying the last year's flagship and getting the customizations and not breaking the bank going in. I mean, unless you really need to go into it, the M2 makes a compelling recommendation.
Refurbs exist, so you might even get a better deal with refurbs. I bought MacBooks refurbed before, not through Amazon. Buy them through Apple. You actually, they're mint. Like you would not know. The only thing you don't get is the fancy packaging. You get kind of a more generic cardboard box. But I highly recommend it because the warranty is just as good, and there's not a single thing on them that's blemished. Like any cosmetic defect, they will replace. So. Yes, you take the chance that maybe it's a lemon, but that's been rarely my experience. Statistically, it's been going through quality control twice, right? So it's probably better than going through it once.
Which is what most of us actually do when we're buying our devices. It goes to random selection QA on coming into us, and then we're playing the lottery either way. But no, as long as you buy it from Apple, even God forbid something is wrong, they'll definitely take care of it for you on there. And I'll say that I'm always going to be a Pro series type of MacBook. Like we're talking on a MacBook Pro. So for me, I'm actually seriously considering getting, because I do need a little bit of additional storage and maybe a little bit more RAM on my configuration. That was my only regret on the M1 Max that I have, is I don't have enough storage. I keep running out. I have the 1 terabyte model, and I was like, oh my God, I wish I had more. So it's nice to see the new updated Air, and I think a lot of people were expecting them. And if you want something light, powerful, it definitely meets the bill and does everything.
I mean, here's a not so secret, folks. I have a MacBook Air M2 13-inch that I got as a review unit, and I didn't choose the specs. It's the base model. I actually went down from a 16 gigabyte, 512 gigabyte MacBook Air M1 down to an 8 256, primarily because of the panel. And the display is so much better, and the camera is so much better, and the speakers are so much better, and the keyboard is so much better. Just battery life also is great. The only thing I went down is on storage and RAM, and storage I'm noticing, and I have to manage it a little bit, but RAM I'm not noticing. And 8 gigs seems like it shouldn't be enough, but for most of the things I do, and again, I don't edit 4K, multiple streams of 4K video in Final Cut. I just do 1080p mostly. And I certainly don't do 8K video that's cropped or something like Marquez or some folks are doing. So, for me, I don't need a Pro. But I have to say, look, this Mac has been fine. Like, it's not ideal storage-wise, but RAM-wise, I'm actually surprised at how well it's holding up. I'm not seeing much swapping. Again, I'm used to, managing my tabs. I don't go overboard on my tabs. So I think that helps. But anyway, good news that there is an Air M3. I hope that they come out with those new iPads soon, though. I'm not an iPad user, but I know my friends have literally all reached out to me when these MacBooks were announced, what was it, Monday or something, and said, Miriam, when is the iPad coming? Do you know what's going on with the iPad? And I'm like, Apple doesn't tell us anything, and I'm not even on their list of media, so I wouldn't know. And so I still don't know, but I feel like the M3 iPads are coming.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's the natural progression. It's just a question of when, but yeah. No, I just, at some point, I just hope that they're able to harness the full power of the M3 on an iPad, and kind of giving us a little bit more desktop solutions and processing levels. So hopefully, with DaVinci on there, and some of the other options in there for editing, that you're starting to actually, push the system, use the full potential of the M3. Because M1 was strong, M2 is way better, and of course M3 just blows both of those out of the water. But it's exciting to see that the lineup is getting upgraded. I was not a believer in the Apple, the M Silicon till about a year after it came out, and all of our friends, some of the friends that you and I share, have raved endlessly about how good the M1 chip is. And I moved on it, and within literally 2 days or so after done setting it up, I was like, oh my God, how does this happen? How is this physically occurring? It didn't make sense.
No,
I had a flight from LA to New York, and I edited 4 videos, rendered 3 of them, and I still had 40% battery. Yeah. Like, this should just not happen. Any Windows PC that is remotely gaming related, that has a decent GPU for rendering and so on, wouldn't even last an hour. But this thing was a full flight with 40%, and it just runs. It truly is one of my favorite devices. I appreciate it. Yeah. So M3.
I went into it knowing, right? Like, I've always gone for the thinnest, lightest, most portable, because I always have an iMac or or Mac Studio or something floating around that, on my desk. And so I'm working on pretty powerful machines at home. And then when I travel, I'm willing to manage my tabs and sacrifice some performance. I was on a 12-inch MacBook, the Retina one, the ones that had one port, the one that had a crappy Intel, a fanless chipset. And I was fine for years, So yeah, I felt it was slow, but I could live with it. And so for years I've been saying Apple needs to make an ARM-based MacBook. Like, even before they announced that they were going to do it, when I could see what the A chips on the iPhone were doing, I was like, this would still be better than my Intel chip in my 12-inch MacBook. They never did a 12-inch MacBook with Apple Silicon. I want them to. I still love that form factor. But as soon as the M1 was announced, I knew, because I knew, TK, I knew what it would bring. Like, I knew that it would be the holy grail of performance and power, right? Yep. So I was like, yeah, this is not the form factor I want, but God damn it, will I do it? Yes, and I did. And of course, it was totally worth my while.
Of course.
But it was lovely to see people like you and others, because I was like, I knew what was going to happen. Did I think it was going to be that good? No. I knew it was going to be better, but I didn't expect it to be that good. But still, seeing everybody just lose their freaking collective minds was so delightful. Because, look, I really hope Qualcomm can deliver with Snapdragon X.
So that's obviously, so that's where the next buck is going to be. Where can Qualcomm finally deliver on the promises that we've been hearing? X Elite, Orion, all of the things that we've been told, the benchmarks that we've seen, the theoretical numbers, because again, we haven't actually tested hardware. I'm hoping that it'll start competing, and we're actually going to start seeing Windows supporting it much more, and seeing more developers support it, and stop doing the whole emulation, just run things natively, so that we can finally get the full benefit. Again, if nothing else, I want DaVinci running on this like yesterday once the
Right.
hardware is available.
Yeah.
That's my preferred editor of choice because it's cross-platform
No, it's
compatible,
fantastic.
very nice.
Absolutely. I mean,
and no licensing required, but it runs really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it
100%.
flies on M1. Let's just say that to this day on M1, 4K 60 videos, for my content at least, it's basically in half the time. Like whatever the timeline is, it takes half the time to render that sucker out. And the file size is crazy small. So it's really, really good. I like the compression. It just works.
I've heard lots of great things about DaVinci.
No,
all right, so let's talk about some EV stuff, and if we have time, let's talk about the Nikon acquiring Red thing, because that's also really cool, and that happened this week. Okay, look, we have to talk about EVs because look, I know I did a special episode with Tim Stevens that I pre-recorded while I was in Antarctica because I wasn't sure I could have enough internet in Antarctica to do a live, remote recording like this. But I'm gonna disappoint some of you, with some more car stuff because Rivian just announced their new vehicles yesterday.
Literally,
and
like yesterday,
OMG. Not only that, but since I did this podcast with Tim while I was away, Tesla has opened up their superchargers to Ford, like they said they would, and I mean by that they've finally gained access. It's not just a theoretical thing, and more importantly, TK, they did it right, meaning that it's just like Tesla. It's not just plug-in charge, but it's actually integrated in the software stack of the Ford cars, which I was really hoping they would do because that's not like plug-in charge exists on CCS. That's not the issue. It's more like, can we get the route planning to actually bring you to the right stations? Anyway, let's talk about Rivian first. What is your gut feeling about Rivian's announcement yesterday? 3 cars, R1, R3, and R3X.
So for me, I'll say this. I'll say my first impression was the design is beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love the design aesthetics. I love some of the cues that they decided to do inside, even with the interior of the car itself. And the biggest thing that probably resonated with me the most is their foray into competing straight with the Model Y. Like they're going head to head with the Model Y on the crossover there with the smaller form factor, but even also on the pricing. They're finally bringing it in. I mean, don't get me wrong. 45,000 is it's not like a free car. It is still something that you need to work into. But in the EV world and what Tesla has been basically living in for so long on the Model 3 and the Model Y, it's a very nice thing to see them jumping into it. I'm hoping that they're able to. I'll probably say this. The wait time is primarily my only anxious thing. Having to say that it's early 2026 is like, we're still in early 24. It's like, okay, wait, hold on a second. Like if you thought waiting for a Tesla order right now is long, which it is, this is just going to make you like for years.
But I lived through that with a Model 3, so I can probably handle it.
I'm living through it right now with a Model 3. But yes, no, I'm with you on the wait time. But it's exciting. It's exciting to see that. There's a little bit of uncertainty depending on how you look at it on the financials on Rivian. Do you want to basically, take a chance on it? But from what we've seen, from what we have, their decisions that they're making right now, they look like they're very committed to getting and delivering these new cars. And again, the charging is going to be the biggest thing, I think, for me. As we talk about the Ford, that is a big part of it. That is a big, massive part of any kind of EV that you pick up. How easy is it for you to charge? Where can you charge it? How flexible the charging ecosystem is. And I think Rivian's the right company to put that competition into that 45,000. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do, and I'm happy. But again, with a few areas where I'm a little bit concerned, but that's with every company, even our regular old Teslas.
100% agree with all what you said. I think for me, we all expected the R2. Obviously, the R2 actually competes directly with the Model Y. If you look at the size, the capacity for carrying people and things, the price, $45K, that's where a base Model Y starts roughly, like it's very much, to me, this is the bread and butter car for Rivian, because here's the reality. We're going to talk about the other two in a minute because I'm more excited about them personally, but I think that the average customer is very conservative, right? Like if you're coming from a gas or a hybrid car and you finally committed to go full battery EV, that's already a big step you're making, right? So Tesla has been very appealing because of, the fact that It is affordable overall for what you get. I mean, there are some things that are not great, but you're getting a pretty good value. And then you're getting supercharger network access, which means that you can possibly, in many cases, consider leaving your gas car behind altogether. Like you no longer have to worry about range anxiety because the range is good. You don't have to worry about charging anxiety because there's lots of chargers everywhere, at least on the major roads of the North American market. And in Europe, it's all CCS anyway, so you're fine. So I think, seeing them kind of like nail that price bracket, that segment. And I think they are. And I think they're doing it in a very Rivian way. It's like taking that adventure concept down in size and price and scale from the R1S, the current large SUV they have, down to a more manageable, slightly smaller R2. And that's freaking awesome. And, as you feel, I feel very trepidatious about the 2-year wait here. But look, I understand. And I think, based on their track record, that they will make it. So, R2, great. R3 and R3X, however, have me much more excited. And I want to kind of read what I just wrote on Twitter because I think it'll just summarize things very well. So what I said is, as a European child of the 80s who currently drives a Tesla in North America, second Tesla Model 3 in 6 years, as a person who can't stand Elon and has driven the Rivian R1T, the pickup truck, prefers smaller performance cars, hot hatches, and wants a software-defined vehicle with access to the supercharger network, the R3X has me smitten. And I want to be very clear that these are all the conditions here. The conditions are for me to replace my EV with a non-Tesla car right now. As much as I despise Elon and his antics and everything about, where he's taken these companies, all of them. No. And I really wish he wasn't part of Tesla, and I wish he wasn't part of SpaceX. As much as there is all of that in the background of my thoughts, to me, I cannot replace a Tesla vehicle with one that doesn't have the range, the charging network, and isn't a software-defined vehicle. Like, this is very critical. A lot of people think, like, oh, look, Kia EV6, great car, I love it. Kia EV9 even, my most recent little love affair. Even though I'm not an SUV person and certainly don't need a 3-row SUV, that car really, really, really impressed me. And I want to say, though, that it's not a software-defined vehicle. It's 80% of a software-defined vehicle. I need 100% of a software-defined vehicle, and the Model 3 was the first. So, to me, if you meet all these conditions, and then on top of that, you add my preference as somebody who grew up in Europe with smaller hatchback cars, who likes performance cars and driving and all that, you add all that together, the R3 in general and the R3X in particular are like nailing it. They like picking all the things. Now, the only area where they don't nail it and kind of scares me, really, frankly, is that I don't like SUVs. And this is really an SUV. Like, it's really designed to perform off-road as well. Yeah. And so I wrote as well that, I'm totally losing my mind over this today. I'm not an SUV person, but the Rivian official R3 and R3X is fire. Hot hatches are back, baby. Between this news and Ford gaining access to superchargers recently, it's been an amazing month for EVs. That's it. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, if they made this car, the R3X, without as big of a wheels and maybe a little less off-roady looking, like more like a traditional hot hatch, that I would be all over. But I'm willing to go with what they're showing and what they're giving us, because here's the reality. Mm-hmm. Our roads aren't getting better, right? Infrastructure is a big problem in North America. And so if I'm going to have to deal with bad roads, maybe I do want something with slightly more ground clearance and bigger tires, We'll see.
It doesn't hurt, but I think it's the overall experience. You're right. Their portfolio is expanding, and I think between the R2 and the R3, and you're getting a few different experiences in there. I think for the most part, the reality of the matter is it's going to come down to usability and function. It's what appeals to you aesthetically, and it is such a breath of fresh air to have a car.
Really is.
Okay, so I'll say from where we started back when I first talked to you years ago, probably in 2020 or so, when I was trying to get my first Tesla, and to where we are now at the beginning of 2024, where our family does not own a gas car. We are fully electric.
Same.
We got a Model 3, Model Y, and we love it. My wife loves the Model Y. Lived with the Model 3 for the longest time, but then once she discovered that there is a slightly bigger version of the 3, she's like, oh my God, this is so much better. Why do you drive the 3? I said, because I love the 3. I like the form factor of the 3. But the short answer is you have the selection. You have the choices of picking the car that fits your needs. And I think Rivian needs to have that a little bit, bringing down the price point, and of course, expanding the ecosystem that we have. The charging network is literally the make or break kind of a conversation right now. Having to fumble through multiple charging stations, multiple software, multiple apps, this doesn't work, they're not doing the handshake correctly. That just makes people unhappy with the product, and they'll blame the car, which is a weird part about it. So Rivian's doing it right. I hope that, like I said, they deliver, and I'm sure they will. It's just, again, having to wait that year or so for some of their deliveries will always kind of get us there. And I think early reviews of the early generation of the Rivians were very, very well. A lot of people left Tesla to go to Rivian for that specifically.
Look, I was blown away. As I said, I am not an SUV pickup truck person. I'm always going to go for smaller, lighter, because first of all, let me finish my thoughts. I'm always going to go for smaller and lighter, first of all, because I don't carry rear passengers very often, and I don't carry much cargo. So to me, it's also in my DNA, like having grown up in Europe with these smaller cars that are lighter, more nimble, I'm always going to go for that. So that's why I've got a Model 3. Even the Model Y feels a little less dynamic to me when I drive it. So, even though for most people it's a dream, like if you come from like a RAV4 or something, it's like, oh my God, that thing is so fast and handles so well and drives so nice, and not saying that the R4 is bad, but the RAV4 is just an appliance, So it's kind of where I'm at. And then on top of that, there's really nothing in the EV world right now that does that. So the R3X has my attention because it ticks that box of smaller, lighter, but it also ticks the box of I've driven the R1T, and it left me very confused as well, because I was like, holy crap, I put this thing in sports mode and it feels like I'm driving a Lamborghini, and I put this in off-road and I'm like, I can run circles around Jeep Wranglers, and then I can go to Home Depot and pick up my junk, and then I can go to like drive just on long road trips and be super comfortable in comfort mode. Like it's like the Swiss Army knife of EVs. It does everything right. And that's when I was convinced that Rivian was that they could do it, that they knew what they were doing. And it's a software-defined vehicle, and now, has NACS supercharger access. So all the boxes have been checked, and that's why I'm particularly excited, and I think they can deliver. Now, the R3, I hope they're going to have some internal discussions here, because look, I still think the R2 is a bread and butter car. Like, I think that they need to get it out as soon as possible, because for more traditional, more conservative people that didn't grow up in Europe, don't want smaller, America wants bigger and they want SUV. That's the reality. And I think the R3 is not quite there for that. But the R3 does fit that box of the urbanite, the customer in the cities of North America that already have good charging infrastructure, that want to do something on the weekend and want a vehicle for it. And they don't need the size and the 3 rows or whatever, they don't need all that stuff. And I think in that sense, I hope they can try to somehow speed it up. And back to what you were saying initially, I think after this reveal, Rivian is in a good place to find investors. Like, I think that they can now turn around and say, look, we need a cash infusion to get this going. Who wants to pay up? And I really hope they can find that investor, because I would love to see R3 come out a year later or less.
Well, I'll say this: the stock market definitely loved the announcement.
Yes,
that is absolutely true. So from that standpoint, they definitely made some money. But still, I think you're right. You're right. They need a little bit of help to get him over. I mean, the decision to halt the production on the Georgia factory, I think that was the right move. There's no need to. I mean, as long as you're able to handle the potential demand that's going to come in. Again, the R2 is going to be. It's kind of like what's going on with Tesla right now. I mean, they're going to be making it more and more and more, and they're going to have back orders and stuff. So this is for sure going to need to be planned for correctly. I hope lessons are learned from what Tesla's doing right now, like the prioritization of production and build up, and especially because people are putting in down payments right now, reservations now to basically say, hey, I'm interested in it. So hopefully they'll do the forward planning that they're anticipating, that we
Yeah.
would love them to do. And yeah, all the best of luck. I think it's definitely going to happen. Within a year from now or so, maybe you and I will be talking again, and you would have already driven it. Like I've been with you in an EV, and it is crazy how much you would enjoy being in them, because I basically followed in your footsteps getting into the Model 3, and I am now at in the process of getting my second Model 3 because that's how much I like it. So it is definitely nice.
So I'm going to see what happens, but I'm excited. And, we talked about it briefly. Ford has access to supercharger network, and they did it right, and it's super sleek. And what are your thoughts on that?
So I'll say this. It's good that they're doing it the way they're doing it. Integration into the software, making it seamless, is a big part of the reason why somebody asks, like, hey, I'm looking to buy and getting an EV and so on. It's always going to come down to how support you're going to be able to get. Traveling, going with it, I think Ford is definitely the way to go. I'm concerned and I'm worried at some point because more and more companies are going into the network already.
Right.
Superchargers are not sitting there empty. Not once have I ever gone to a supercharging location where it's totally empty and it just sits there. There's congestion. There's sometimes waiting there. And I think that what needs to happen now is that Tesla, as they're starting to open up their experiences and becoming a little bit more somewhat of the standard, the de facto charging solution, that they need to start, pushing and upgrading these options and providing more stalls, more locations. At least in my area of the hoods here in the burbs of LA, within the last year or so, we got 3 extra supercharging stations.
Yeah, they're working on it. They're really working on it. And I think they're aware of it. Because even just, I drove up and down the West Coast a lot along I-5. And just in the 6 years I've owned my Model 3, well, 2 of them, it's been night and day. Like so many more chargers. Most of them are 250 kilowatt, version 3. And most sites have like 20 at least, if not like 50 or 100 some. Like Kettleman Station, 96 stalls, right? Like it's like, wow. So, I think they're there. I think that they're aware of this. I think they're becoming an energy company in a way, which I think is also really cool. Yeah. So I'm more concerned about things like charging port placement and the conflicts that are going to arise on the older superchargers, the current ones basically with the shorter cord. All this is there's going to be some growing pains.
The Rivian, if nothing else, I think maybe the first thing that kind of stood up to me as well, I think the charging port is on the opposite side of the car.
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about that today on the internet and asking RJ, the CEO, to, hey, maybe it's time to still change that because it doesn't make sense.
Or make it dual. Maybe make an option for both sides or something.
Yeah.
Or include an extension cable or something. I don't know.
Extensions are going to be tough because electrically they're kind of dangerous. But look, I think that we're going to go through a growing pains period for the next 2-3 years as other manufacturers come into the supercharger network. And then, of course, the shorter cords and this version 3 charger. When the version 4s are rolled out everywhere, it'll be a lot easier. But I think it's going to be okay. I think that, I think in some super dense urban areas, like you're in LA, I'm in San Francisco, it's going to be a little rough in some places. It already is, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think that it's going to smooth out eventually. I think that they're well aware of that. And, I think also I talk to so many people that are like, I can't have an EV because I don't have charging at home. Like, I don't have charging at home. I never had charging at home.
Oh, yeah. No,
I've had an EV for 6 years. It's not a problem, folks. You just go to a supercharger late at night when the prices are cheap. You just grab your Netflix and watch some shows you missed, check your email on your phone for half an hour, you're done. Like, it's great, actually. It makes me get out of the house. It makes me just kind of like have this alone time. It's nice. So I think... yeah, it's not an issue. For the longest time, the closest supercharger to my home was about 10 miles away on the freeway. And late at night, traffic wasn't bad, and I did that. And now I have 1-2 blocks from my house. So I'm just drive 2 blocks, plug in at 11 p.m. when the rates are low and nobody's charging. And I just sit there and watch Netflix for 30 minutes. What's the big deal?
No. It's definitely manageable.
And since I work from home, I don't commute. So I'm charging every 2 or 3 weeks at worst. It's like, because my range is 300-ish miles. Yeah. I think it's not an issue. But because more of us are now realizing, hey, I can own an EV and not have a charging station at home, we might also see some, growing pains there. So that's kind of where I'm going.
For me, that was one of my things that I decided to do, to install a charging station. Unfortunately, it caused me to upgrade my existing infrastructure for the house because I guess my electrical panel was not rated for it. It kept failing on me on that one. But yeah, no. Once you have it, God forbid something happened, you need to. You could always top it off in the morning. But for short trips and so on, like go to work, come back, because for my day job I do have to travel about 30 to 40 miles. So it is fun to drive, fun to charge, and I'm also lucky enough that at my office they have charging. They're not Tesla chargers, but they're like the slower ones.
Level 2, right? Yeah.
Yeah. When you're in the office for 8 or 9 hours, you'll be back up in no time. Even if it's charging at like at 30 or 32, my 32 amps, it's not a bad idea. There's options, there's solutions, and we're seeing more and more people jump on it. I'm excited to see that, and I'm hoping again as we see more adoption of the Tesla charging experience or integration of it, more companies and more people will feel more secure. Because that's, I think, why Tesla gets so much of the praise in there is because they have such a vast charging system.
And it's reliable.
Exactly.
And it's fast. Like Ford people are seeing better performance on superchargers that they're not optimized for than they are on CCS chargers that are technically faster. Like, come on. I knew that was going to happen. I just knew it, TK. I was like, watch it. Because it's not about like the numbers and the specs as we know from using phones. It's about the user experience.
Exactly.
So
it's what brings people back. It's what keeps them in the experience. It's what keeps getting them recommending other people to buy them. It is absolutely in the user experience. It's all about the post sale experience than just the ooh ah in the beginning. Oh, the car looks nice, yeah, but how does it handle? How does it drive? How does it charge? How do you all the benefits?
What is it like to live with? Right?
Yeah. No. Again, going full EV was a little bit scary for me at the beginning because we always had that backup of, oh, God forbid something happens. But after having it for 3 years and literally with the only major issue that I had was a bad battery.
Yeah, you had a pretty big issue there.
Yeah. Other than that, knock on wood, it's been decent. And then now I'm waiting for the Highland. Hopefully that will blow my mind another time.
Nice. So let's talk about this very briefly because we need to wrap up the Red and Nikon story here. I'm not obviously investing here because I don't use Red cameras and I don't use Nikon cameras, although I have. But for, it seems like the right move. 20 years in, they're cashing out. Those guys who worked really hard on making Red a thing. Yeah, enjoy, guys. Have a good time. Retire. I think Nikon's a good partner here. I think that Canon has already got a whole division that does movie and digital video cameras that are high end, and then Sony, of course, as well. And there's a bunch of other competitors out there. But Red, Nikon didn't really have anything, so Red is a good acquisition for them.
Oh no, absolutely, and they have a very nice, a portfolio of devices, of hardware, and their camera experiences. The video experience there has definitely been top notch. Many creators. Again, we talked about Amar Marquez at the beginning, with editing his, red 6K or 8K footage. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's hopefully Nikon's able to make the transition good and carry the torch very nicely. I'm sure.
I really hope that what comes out of it is that they leave Red alone as much as possible, because as a Japanese company, I'm always concerned about the cultural, I've seen it when I worked at Sony myself, right? Like there's a big cultural clash between the US Sony and the Japan Sony all the time. I'm hoping that they can work through these cultural differences. But more importantly, I'm hoping we see like Red gain access to Nikon's lens ecosystem in a more transparent, it's already possible, but I'm just saying in a more like standardized and streamlined way, because
first party solution.
Nikon lenses, guys, like, oh yeah, juicy and delicious, So, I think it's good. Very surprising, but I don't have any qualms with it, but I'm not invested either. So,
I am, unfortunately, neither Nikon or Red side on my end. I'm Sony all the way. So, yeah.
Well, let's wrap up. TK, do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet, your various social media handles and your YouTube channel, all that good stuff?
So as usual, I would probably say the easiest way to find me is to go to TK Bay. You can find me on YouTube as well as on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, all the socials under those will be under TKDSL8655, or just look for the beard. Let the beard guide you, and you'll be able to find me there. It's easy to find.
I love your slogan.
Thank you.
You know where to find me, folks. I'm at Tankerl, TNKGRL, like the comic book character. Just drop all the vowels, and you get my social media handle on Twitter, on Facebook, on Insta, on Blue Sky, on Threads. It's everywhere. So please follow me, find me. And if you want to listen to the podcast every week, subscribe. mobiletechpodcast.com is the URL. So tell your friends. You can also find me on all the big podcasting platforms, right? So, Google, Apple, Pocket Cast, Spotify, everywhere. So please subscribe and tell your friends and review or rate the show if you can in your favorite podcast app. That would be awesome. There's a YouTube channel you can connect to that has some content as well. youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. You know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment in the YouTube. Let me know what you think of the various devices I put up there. But if you want a special treat, there is a video version of this podcast. We mentioned it earlier in the show where we were showing off the phones that, you can get a video version of the podcast in advance of the audio and see our faces, see the devices. It's a little more personal. There's some bloopers in there sometimes. There'll be one this time. Mm-hmm. And help me out if you can. And so it's on Patreon, patreon.com/TNKGRL. There's other goodies there as well if you don't want the video version. So check it out and help me out if you can. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, MediaTek. MediaTek, the world's 5th largest global fabless semiconductor company, powers more than 2 billion connected devices each year and is a market leader in developing innovative systems on chips, SoCs, for mobile device, home entertainment, connectivity, automotive, and IoT products. And thanks to you, TK, for being my guest yet again. Really appreciate you coming on again.
Always my pleasure. And thank you. Thank you for working with me. And I know the scheduling was a little bit off, but I'm glad we're finally able to get it tonight.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to have you on. We'll have you on again in the future. And folks, we'll have a show next week. So stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.